Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we are looking at another Ultra Prism deck. This time it's going to be Turbo Metals. Basically, we've gained a bunch of new metal support and a great new attacker in Dusk Mane Necrozma, and we're going to try an all-basic Max Elixir style deck to see if it can work as just a good old beat stick, hitting such amazing numbers, and that's going to be enough to win games. That is the mentality of this deck. So we'll go through a basic concepts, then we'll look at the list itself and look at some tech options, some matchups, and leave with some closing thoughts like last time. So the basic concept: Metal has gained so many new cards from Ultra Prism, it's ridiculous. They've really pushed the type. You can see the Prism Star Solgaleo there. That provides great energy acceleration on top of Max Elixirs and Registeel. You actually have a lot of means of recovering metal energy from both the discard pile and from the deck with Max Elixir. So we really do have a lot of ramp in the deck, and that lets you get into more powerful, expensive attack costs. And that's really what Dusk Mane Necrozma is all about. He, of course, can deal 250 with his GX attack and 220 base with his regular attack. So he really is a fantastic beat stick. We sort of saw some flirtation with the sort of all-basic metal deck in the London International Championships, where a few American players were piloting it, mainly to counter Gardevoir at the time, of course, but there was the hints there that there was something brewing in the works. We just needed a little bit of a bigger push with the metal deck for it to become a more viable deck, and I think at this point we have more energy acceleration with the Prism Star, which is also a very good card in its own right, and we have an even better frontman in Dusk Mane Necrozma. So really, the deck archetype is going to be very simple: pile up loads of energy and then start smashing. It is a tried and tested concept. We know Turbo Darkrai was very powerful for a long period of time. Volcanion and Buzzwole, these are two other big basic decks that just love swinging and hitting big numbers right now in the format. And I believe that the metal archetype could be a new one to the mix that could also be equally, if not more powerful. So let's start looking at the list. So here are the Pokemon. Only 13 in total, all basics as we see, so we actually have a lot of space in the deck. We are going to play 2 Registeel for his Turbo Arm attack. Very nice at getting some early pokes on the board. Not too big of a deal because Dusk Mane hits so hard anyway, but it can be helpful. Mainly, though, you're doing this so that you can get energy from your discard pile onto one of your benched Pokemon, and hopefully it's going to be one of your Dusk Mane Necrozmas. That's the overall intention, so we can start powering those up and getting energy acceleration going, just like you would do in Turbo Darkrai with a non-EX Yveltal. We're doing the very similar things here. We're going to play 2 Genesect EX for its drive change ability. Once during a turn, you may put a tool attached to this Pokemon into your hand. We're playing 3 different tools in the deck, and we can abuse all of these. We have 3 float stones, so we can hopefully get into our Registeel quickly and then drive change the float stone back into our hand if we want to protect it for later on in the game. We have Fighting Fury Belts to make Dusk Mane Necrozma even more tanky, because, you know, his output's already good enough in many cases. So he becomes tankier, as does the Registeel and the Solgaleo. Everything just gets a big HP boost when you have the Fury Belt involved, so that is very good for you. And we're also playing EXP shares, so Drive Change is going to be doing a huge amount of work because we're going to be moving these tools all around the board onto our most valuable targets, which is very awesome. Genesect EX also has an attack Rapid Blaster for 3 metal energy. It does 100 base, and you can discard as many metal energy attached as you'd like to do an additional 20 each time you discard. So this is good if we don't need to go all out on Dusk Mane Necrozma and start discarding a bunch of energy and overkilling things. You can instead go for Rapid Blasters at times to get over single prize Pokemon. So definitely a decent option there when you are up against some single prize decks. I'm going to play 1 Giratina promo. I think Greninja gets much stronger with Cynthia being released, and I think the deck would otherwise really struggle against it. I still think it could be an awkward matchup, but the Giratina gives us a chance at the very least. It's also pretty good for some Zoroark break decks, because you can stop the stand-in ability at times. Because I believe Straight Dark could be coming back into the format, because stealing Meteor Tempest for 1 Dark Energy with Foul Play is just ridiculous. So also having that extra little help against Zoroark breaks, letting them, or not letting them simply jump into the active and steal attacks, is also another thing to note. Oranguru gives us some good late game support. Hopefully we can get into our final energy pieces or Guzmas to finish off the game. We are going to play 3 Tapu Lele GX to be consistent and all that good stuff. And you can see the 2 big new cards that we are playing. 3 of them are our main attacker, the Dusk Mane Necrozma GX that you can see on the left side of your screen. It has Claw Slash for 3 colorless, which just does 60. I mean, this is even very reasonable against things like Greninja, where you could KO Froakies, slap the Fury Belt on, you can KO Frogadiers and start stifling their setup. So even Claw Slash has its uses. Then we have Meteor Tempest as his main attack that for 3 metal and a colorless does 220 damage, and you discard 3 energy from this Pokemon. So it's similar to things like the Tapu Bulu GX that we've seen, also similar to things like Turtonator, but this time the base output is just on another level, really. 220 is just absurd, KOing pretty much everything. We are only playing Fury Belts in here, so there's the potential for some things to be out of range, like Decidueyes and Metagross, but really that's about it. Everything else gets trapped up in this one-hit KO. So Meteor Tempest, very, very powerful, very potent, and I still believe that Fury Belt's the best way to go, just because being this tanky means that you can use things like Eclipse Sun GX, his final attack, and it means that he's probably going to stay around for a following turn. So Eclipse Sun does 250 damage for 3 metals, and this attack can only be used if you have more prizes remaining than your opponent. And this is going to be the GX attack that we try and use in the deck. Although we can be very aggressive with our Dusk Mane Necrozmas, I believe it's more beneficial for you to be going for Turbo Arms in the early game, setting up 1 and 2 Dusk Mane Necrozmas here and there, getting 2 energy on 2 different Dusk Manes with the help of Elixirs, Turbo Arms, manual attachments. Let your opponent take the first prize or 2 prizes, and then you go in with an Eclipse Sun GX. They can't deal with a 230 HP Pokemon, most likely. And then you can just attach 1 more the following turn, do a big Meteor Tempest. You've taken 4 prizes, and then you have the reload of things like Elixirs, things like manual attachments as well. And you even have the Prism Star Solgaleo to take your final 2. That's pretty much how we're going to try and navigate our game. We're going to start putting pressure on by just getting attachments all over the board. Then we're going to go for the Eclipse Sun to rebalance the prize trade against other aggressive decks. And then we have so much reload that we can probably set up a second Dusk Mane who can take our final 2 prizes. That's the intention of the deck. That's really how simple it can go. So the Eclipse Sun is a very, very important GX attack for the deck, and it's the one you'll use every single game. Finally, we have the Prism Star Solgaleo, which is on the right side of the screen. This is another new card. You can only play 1 copy of him because he is a Prism Star. I wish we could play more, but the Rising Star attack for a single metal is absolutely phenomenal. It's similar to a Nitro Tank GX in how much it can get energy back on your board. It states, for each of your opponent's Pokemon in play, you can attach a metal energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way that you like. So it's fantastic mid-game reload. As I just mentioned, if the opponent is going to be the one taking the first prizes, which oftentimes for our own strategy to work, it makes sense for them to do that. Even if they Guzma up, for example, one of your Dusk Mane Necrozmas, which has 2 energy attached, for example, you can try and get some reload with a Rising Star the following turn, and then have, once again, 2 more Dusk Mane Necrozmas ready to go. So either you're doing this in the early turns after the opponent's Brigitted, and you've happened to have some Sycamores and some Ultra Balls to hand. Rising Star can be very powerful, but also similar to a Nitro Tank GX, where it can be the mid to late game reload. Even maybe you're ending your opponent to a low hand size using the Rising Star. Don't forget that you have 160 hit points on a single prize Pokemon, so it's difficult to get through, and that can get even higher with the help of Fighting Fury Belt, so definitely an awkward Pokemon to get around. He also has another great attack, Coronet Impact, does 160, and this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. Thanks to Drive Change, we can hopefully move Float Stones and manipulate that so it's not an issue. Again, we have Fighting Fury Belt, so we can go to 170. So the Prism Star Solgaleo can do a nice 2-for-1 trade by getting rid of a Tapu Lele and then forcing the opponent to Guzma around this guy because he's a single prize Pokemon. So yeah, very, very good new cards, and that's what we're going to base the whole new deck around because they're very, very good beat sticks and they have inbuilt reload. So very simple deck. Drive Change, a big ability going on here as well. Very, very helpful. Instruct as well can help us get through in the late game. So all the tricks of the deck are in the Pokemon. The rest of the deck is all very, very simple stuff and really just helps the deck flow. So let's move on to the items. I'm playing just one copy of Field Blower. I've said that our abilities are important. The drive change can be nice. The Oranguru, again, very, very helpful. I feel that Garbodor's not too prevalent right now, so I think we can get away with just one copy of Field Blower, and then instead of having more copies, we're going to play a couple of the Mt Coronets that you can see on the right side of your screen. Mt Coronet allows you to, once during your turn, search your discard pile for 2 metal energies and then put them back into your hand. So you've seen the big discards that we can do with our Necrozma. So being able to recycle these and have extra attachments each turn, I believe, is more beneficial than having multiple Field Blowers in the list. So that's the sort of balance I'm trying to go between. Some stadiums are going to be important to get rid of. Things like Parallel City can be awkward for you. So I think a total of 1 Field Blower and 2 stadium is right. You maybe could flip around the counts if you would like, based on the metagame. Then we're going to play 4 Max Elixir and 4 Ultra Ball, both very important roles here. Ultra Ball going to get us into Lele's to get us moving, of course, but can also be integral at getting rid of metal energy. And this is very, very important because both our Prism Star Solgaleo and the 2 Registeel work from the discard pile. So being able to put energies in the bin, going to be very, very helpful for the overall strategy to get more energies flowing back onto the board. 4 Max Elixir, of course, going to help thin the deck even more and get more energy on your board, which is where we want to see it. The tools, again, very simple. I've already mentioned them a bunch. 3 Floatstone means that we can hopefully move into our preferential attackers quite easily. Drive Change is going to help get multiple uses out of these Floatstones, protect them from the opponent's Field Blowers as well if they are important enough. 3 Fighting Fury Belt. I believe that 230 is KOing almost everything in the format. There are some key notes out there like the Decidueye GX and the Metagross that you're not getting one-hit KOs on, but I believe overall you can beat those matchups just with little prods from things like Registeels, because that is definitely relevant damage to be aware of. So I think you can get around these Pokemon easily enough, and when that's the case, Fighting Fury Belt is probably preferential because it's going to mean that you can just have that much more HP, be a lot more awkward for these other one-hit KO style decks. We'll talk about the matchup spread a little bit later, but just forcing the opponent to have Field Blower on top of everything else to hit 190 as a baseline is going to be important. So the Fighting Fury Belt's very, very good. These were always a staple in some of the Turbo Dark variants of the time. So yeah, I'm incorporating this into the list as well because it's just going to make things that much more difficult to knock out. And then finally, 2 Experience Share. I've said a few times that the GX attack, the Eclipse Sun GX, is very important, and that pretty much does leave ourselves fairly vulnerable to your opponent just Guzmaing up the most important thing and just wiping it out. So spreading our energy around the board with Elixirs and Registeels is going to be one way we can try and mitigate this. Another way is going to be Experience Share, so that we can have so many threats on the board that even if they take out the most important one, in air quotes, you will have others to finish off the game. I know Dusk Mane does discard from himself, but typically he'll still have at least 1 energy remaining on himself, so the XP share will work. Registeel has 1 energy on it. The Prism Star Solgaleo, pretty much everything should have 1 energy on at least that you're attacking with. So the experience share going to be really nice. It can go on Oranguru, it can go on Genesect EX, it can go anywhere, and you can just drive change it off when you need to start attacking with that Pokemon itself. So we can put the XP share back onto the bench to reuse it, or we can take the XP share off, slap a Fighting Fury Belt on, and now we have a perfect attacker. So I really like the experience share in here. It just gives us that a little bit more energy acceleration on top of everything else to help us keep up. You have to think about things like Magnezone variants, where they can splash energy all over the board. We've got to keep up with Vikabulu, which can also splash energy all over the board. Volcanion lists can obviously attach more energy thanks to their baby Volcanion. So us having Drive Change EXP share on top of Prism Star and Registeel is hopefully going to be enough to maintain enough energy throughout the game to just keep swinging, and that is really what we are hoping to do. Onto the supporters, very, very simple counts. For Sycamore being preferred to Cynthia, of course, because we want to discard metal energies. Too important to not do that. So we are just going to max out on the traditional supporters that we've seen pre-Ultra Prism. I wouldn't start flirting with the N count, even though Cynthia is a very, very potent and powerful card. I think that I keep mentioning that we're probably going to be the one hoping to go down in prizes so that our GX attack will swing us back into the game, really pole vault the matchup, and typically if your opponent's taken the first two, an N and a GX attack knocking out their main attacker is going to set them back a peg or two. So N still really important, I think more important than playing Cynthia. Big 4 copies of Guzma. If we're doing 220 and discarding 3 from ourselves, we don't want to be wasting it on a 60 HP Pokemon or anything else the opponent's thrown into the active. We want to be hitting the good stuff, so Guzma is going to help us do that. 2 copies of Brigette. One awkward thing is that we can't grab ourselves the Genesect EX. That's the only real criticism with Brigette, but it's still going to be great for getting Registeel, Prism Star, and your Dusk Mane Necrozmas. So really, really cool. Also gets Oranguru, so very nice. As the 2 count, I think with 3 Lele, that's plenty to get ourselves going. And finally, a big old 14 basic metal energies. It's the lifeblood of the deck. You're going to use Mt Coronet to get these back. You're going to use Solgaleo to get these back. You're going to use Registeel. So you want to see them in the hand. You want to have plenty in the deck. And 14 is going to help you do that. Again, these are mimicking the counts of things like Volcanion that we've seen previously have high counts. Obviously, Volt had to steam up all the time. But Turbo Dark, remember, in its later stages, played up to like 15 basic Darks. So we're going to mimic that because we have the space and they're just so integral to get in the bin as well as get into the deck so that we can Max Elixir onto everything that we want. So yeah, 14 energy. It's a lot, but I believe it's the correct count to go ahead with. So here is the overall list. If you guys want to take a snap now and just pause the video and see what's going on here. I've actually got counts wrong here. What have I done? 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, I'm missing a missing a trainer here, so it's actually 33. Yeah, so I just counted these up and it's not 60. I've been floating around with my Coronet count. At one point I had just 1 Coronet and a third Registeel, but I've changed it now. So yeah, it should be 33 at the top there. Whoops, I'm bad. Can't count to 60. Feels bad, man. Okay. But yeah, take a photo. It'll last longer. There you go. It's also in the description. So let's look at some tech options. So plenty of different things you can play around with. I want to go to the middle first and talk about Choice Band. Choice Band going to be important if Decidueye Leafeon does develop into a top tier archetype. It also can help out against Glaceon because you're hitting that much more with just a 1 energy Registeel. So Choice Band could be important. At the moment, I'm preferring Fury Belts. We sort of have to keep an eye on Field Blower counts in general to see how important they are. I think at the moment, it's more reasonable to start off with the Fury Belts and then move into Choice Band if need be, if there are too many tanking decks out there. And then there's also the debate of having Super Rod or Rescue Stretcher in the deck. I'm playing none at the moment. We do have some fairly low counts, but obviously we can't recover the Prism Star Solgaleo anyway. And I think if you've lost 3 Dusk Mane Necrozmas, you've lost the game. So because we have things like the Genesect that can turn into a backup attacker, I think right now we don't need much Pokemon Recycle. The Super Rod could be reasonable because it can help your Elixir odds later on, but of course it does hurt your Prism Star Solgaleo's utility, and it hurts the overall things like Registeel as well. So keeping or sort of managing your energy in the deck and discard pile is one of the skills to this list, and I think Super Rod can sometimes skew that, making it a dead card. In a similar way, Rescue Stretcher, not going to be too influential unless you've prized an awkward number of Dusk Mane Necrozmas, so you can simply play a 4th Dusk Mane over something like Super Rod or Rescue Stretcher as well. That's, again, very reasonable. For now, I think, because we have the 2 Genesect EX as backups for big damage, and even the Prism Star Solgaleo can hit 160 or 170 with a Fury Belt, I think we have plenty without any Pokemon recovery. Onto the left side, there are plenty other Metal-type Pokemon that have been tested with previously. As I mentioned earlier, at the London Internationals, a few people were playing heavy Celesteela variants. Celesteela, of course, is weak to lightning and not fire, and this could be one way that you can try and balance out the Volcanion matchup, which is otherwise very, very awkward for you. I think Celesteela's damage output is much more improved by the Choice Band, so I think you'd make a few changes with the list to try and incorporate the Celesteela, but he could be a useful one-of. Blaster GX is still a decent attack as well, and it gives you an option of a one-hit KO that isn't reliant on you being behind on prize cards, so Celesteela could be pretty good in the list for sure. Cobalion as well can be pretty nice. Cobalion is going to be a way to just use a big one-hit KO for just 2 energy, whereas everything else is much more hungry for energy. We are already playing EXP shares, so being able to simply get a revenge knockout on anything is going to be nice for that lower energy count, especially because we can drive change our EXP shares around the board. Again, Cobalion prefers Choice Band, so that's why he's not in the list right now. Magearna EX could be nice. Its ability is always something you can be aware of. There aren't too many things that we want to negate right now with Mystic Heart, so that's why it's not included in the list. It can be pretty nice against things like Greninja as well, so you can keep your drive change around, and you can keep Oranguru around. And also Magearna with a Fury Belt can hit 130 and doesn't have to discard from itself, so it could be pretty decent as an attacker if you're expecting more Greninja. And that's really why I have gone for the Fighting Fury Belt route, because so much damage is improved with the Fury Belt in the Metal deck, and it's more HP that they have to get over, so I'm really making a conscious decision to try and have a good Greninja matchup right now. Magearna can be an extra step in that direction. Finally, to the right side, we've seen Silvally Metals working previously, and I think that's a list for another video, really. And similarly, Zoroark GX has been paired with a few metal decks as well. Trade can get rid of metal energies for you to keep cycling cards as a bit more powerful draw engine, and also giving you means of using the Prism style Solgaleo for full effect. Getting like 5 energies back can be ridiculous at times, so you could think about playing some of these stage 1s. They do take up quite a few spaces, however, so you do have to tinker around with a few counts, and it's whether or not they are worth it. Zoroark definitely going to get you more cards throughout a game than Oranguru ever will, but they both, at the end of the day, serve as end-proofing mechanisms, so it's just weighing up your options and seeing what you want to go with. So let's look at some matchups here. There aren't many that are too awkward. I think some that stand out to me, going to be the Volcanion. Right now I'm not playing Celesteela, so the fire archetypes are going to be very difficult, especially because Baby Volcanion becomes so potent at taking one-hit KOs, even on your big 190 HP GXs. Luxray, I think, could be awkward. We are quite reliant on Max Elixir, and things like Registeel is going to be resisted, and even then they have the ability as well that can reduce their damage, so we have to keep investing big 220 swings with our Dusk Mane Necrozma, and when we're only taking 1 prize as a reward, it's very difficult to chain that against especially an item locking deck. So I think Luxray will be a hard matchup. Turbo Raichu, I think, both because we are similar decks. We're trying to both just get a bunch of energy on the board and start swinging, but I think Raichu can do it much quicker and much more consistently. If ever we miss something like 1 Max Elixir, it can mean the game against a Raichu player, especially because, once again, they have resistance, so we have to make sure that we have Fighting Fury Belt in every occasion, pretty much. So, again, that's pretty important. Garchomp Lucario, similar reason to why we think Luxray is a hard matchup, just because there's lots of single prize Pokemon that we have to get through. Going to be awkward, especially because the Garchomp can take one-hit KOs on us with Field Blowers, which they're likely playing because they're an ability-focused deck, and things like Choice Band in the mix as well. So Garchomp Lucario, another bad matchup. So yeah, not all perfect for this deck, but here are a few closing thoughts. The deck is very straightforward, similar to Turbo Darkrai, similar to Volcanion in how it will probably function and play out. For those of you who have played those decks previously, I think it will be very similar. And essentially, we're trying to make the most of one of the best attackers that we have now available to us in the game, which is the Dusk Mane Necrozma GX. So why not just try and build around him and make him work as best as possible? There's obviously also the Magnezone list to come, and there's also going to be the Metagross list, which we're going to show fairly soon. We're going to start updating a bunch of old decks once we've got through all the new ones. So that's something to be aware of. But yeah, I think just trying to build around Dusk Mane Necrozma in any way possible is going to be a decent policy, just because he hits such good numbers. And I think, finally, as I mentioned, there's a big Achilles heel of the deck, and that is single prize decks. So because this card has been released, there may be some sort of a trend towards decks like Greninja, decks like Garchomp Lucario, decks like Empoleon, decks like Luxray, just because it's so easy to do this big swing of damage on other 2-prize Pokemon. This guy does it better than anyone else, the Dusk Mane Necrozma, so there may be a trend in that direction, just because how good this card can be at trading 2 prizes for 2 prizes against other GX and EX focused decks. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. I think Turbo Darkrai is potential and is being slept on in comparison to things like Metagross and Magnezone. I believe this is definitely a contender as well, just because of its simplicity, and it's a formula that we've seen previously in other decks, and those have all been top tier archetypes, so I see no reason why this can't contend as well. So let me know what you guys think about the archetype and the list. Sorry about not being able to count up to 60. That'll be funny in the comments, I imagine. I need to stop making these videos at like 1 in the morning. But maybe one day. Maybe one day. For now though, guys, please leave a like to the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And yeah, it's been Joe from OmniPoke. Let me know what you guys want to see next. And I'll be back with another video soon. Cheers.